Welcome back to the Green Plains, a city of 200,000, built on an almost entirely pedestrian street grid, and it works. A massive tram network connects the communities. An even larger rail network handles long-distance travel. And just to make it harder for this build, I'm not using Metro at all. But here's where this gets really interesting. This isn't a car-free utopia. Green Plains is an industrial juggernaut. Freight rail, big trucks, complex logistics, the exact pressures that usually break pedestrian grids and destroy walkability. But this grid doesn't break because the infrastructure isn't competing with the pedestrians, it's engineered for them. Let me show you how it all connects. And we'll start with the biggest central conflict, how I keep heavy freight trucks away from those beautiful walkable streets. I've focused the industry by the mountain range and kept residential on the plains, and I have developed two completely different grids for each, with office and commercial being strategically placed on both grids. There is a challenge to getting the industrial traffic connected to the main highway, because the main highway runs through my residential areas. There are 3 connections in and out of the city, and 2 of the 3 are almost exclusively used for truck traffic, and are 2 endpoints of the same route that wraps the truck traffic around the city, and lets citizens of the Green Plains carry on unaffected. And there are smaller truck networks that weave through lower densities that feed into this route. I do use conventional roads to supplement the pedestrian grid. It helps with services, which I'll get into later, but I use them as sparingly as possible. Now I've put office and commercial zones throughout the residential grid, usually next to the train stations that service their community, and some popular residential tram stops even have some small stores around. Office and commercial are both slowly eating into the industrial zones as the city's dense urban core expands. But there is dedicated infrastructure for industry throughout the map, so there is still plenty of room to grow for industry. So we will let office and commercial consume industrial zones in the city's core. Here is a zoning composite shot of the city center. This is of course where the walkable grid dominates, along with trams that move citizens from district to district. There are 19 tram lines that service the city, connecting population centers with schools, services, and train stations. These trams are critical in keeping the streets car-free. Tram ridership is currently at 98,000 a month, and combined with trains for longer distances, this light and heavy rail network carries 74% of the population a month, and I'm aiming to get that number higher. Let's shoot for 80. Now with this focus on walkability, there's no buses and no taxis, and again, no metro for this build. I want to keep trains featured as the primary source for long distance travel. It keeps all of the action on the surface, and I like watching the trains moving through the city. So it's up to this light and heavy rail network, and so far it's getting the job done. Now there's another network getting the job done, and that is this network of service helicopters. In order to reduce the number of patrol cars, fire engines, and ambulances moving around on the pedestrian grid, I have invested heavily into air services for police, fire, and medical. I did some math in another video, but the summary is every medical helicopter is about 5 ambulances I don't need on the streets, and every police helicopter is worth about 13 patrol cars, and 1 or 2 of these fire helicopter pads is more than enough to completely remove the need for fire engines to respond to any fire on the grid. But you still need traditional firehouses for the coverage requirement, so I use this 1-engine station from the Northeast region pack for this city. Death care, garbage, and mail still need to use the pedestrian grid, and there's still plenty of ambulances and patrol cars about, but to this point, this maximum air service strategy has done its job to minimize services and keep the streets walkable. And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle: density. Let's go ahead and acknowledge that this pedestrian-only grid works out fine in low density as long as you're willing to commit hard to some form of transit. But this strategy really starts to flourish in dense zoning, like the center of the Green Plains, a pedestrian's paradise. The city center is split into 3 sections by water, but is easily traversed on foot with a multitude of bridges for crossing. The zoning here is mostly residential, but I do have some commercial and office that produces a little truck traffic, but I think the trade-off is worth it to have shopping and jobs in close range. There are 2 train stations that service the city center, one on each side of a small river, and all local rail routes go through one of these 2 stations, and most of the trams tie in close or to a route that does as well. The land in between these stops has the busiest pedestrian, tram, rail, and road traffic all at once, but aside from freight and commuter rail sharing the track through this section, everything stays unaffected by the other, and that means the streets stay walkable. Now here's a look at the Green Plains, my most walkable city. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.